Welcome to the Trailblazing Texas podcast, where we embark on a journey through our diverse Texas landscapes and breathtaking trails while always engaging with our amazing Texas hiking community. So settle in, tighten up those bootlaces, and get ready for the thrilling tales awaiting for you on this episode. Welcome to the Trailblazing Texas podcast. I am your host, Jason, as always, and today we have a Trailblazing Texas podcast first. We have our very first Texas hiking legend panel. So we have Todd, we have Joe from Trekker Joe's, and we have JR, who is new to the podcast. Welcome, guys.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, again, exactly.
Todd, this was, I believe, your idea to have, I don't know how often, I would like to try to once a month, once a quarter, something to have a panel on and just talk about Texas hiking and some of the hikes that we've done since the last meeting. And so this is pretty exciting for me. So I guess kind of to start off, if you guys just kind of want to introduce yourself, how long you've been hiking, backpacking. And I think for me, it's cool. Is like, what was your most difficult, hardest hike that you've completed so far? So Todd, you want to kick us off?
Sure. I think we talked about it on my episode, but been backpacking for around 10 years now. Really gotten pretty serious over the past, 8 years. It's what I like to do, backpacking and hiking wherever I can, whenever I can.
Yeah. So what's been your most difficult?
Physically, I would say the first time I did Guadalupe Peak because I was so out of shape.
Yeah.
Now that I'm what I would consider a backpacker, I'd have to say my most difficult would be the 32 mile days on the Caprock Canyon Trailway, which not only was a physical beatdown, but it was also a mental thing.
To having hogs run across right in front of you, yeah.
That's not fun.
Yeah.
But when you cross a little service road every 2 or 3 miles, your brain starts playing tricks on you. Hey, you could get on this road right here and somebody could come pick you up and you could be done.
Yep.
Hey, that hotel turkey makes a pretty good hamburger and that bed's really soft.
Was the bed comment marked to me?
Yeah, to the listeners, JR, he's a baller, so he's laying in a bed, all relaxed, and this will definitely be on the shorts that I make for this podcast episode. So, JR, what about you?
Awesome.
I started backpacking in '99. We went and did two hikes in Colorado. There were 14ers that completely kicked our butts. We thought we trained and hiked and packed with like 50-pound packs on our back in the neighborhood in San Antonio. And we got up there and I think we walked maybe a half a mile and we leaned over on our trekking poles and thought, oh my God, what am I doing here? And we did those two hikes and they kicked our butt. And then life got ahead of me and somehow I met Todd, and I want to say it was on a Facebook group, wasn't it, buddy?
It was on a Facebook group.
Yeah, Facebook group, and we've done a few hikes together, and then I kind of life again caught up, and then your podcast is what really got me inspired to hike and backpack again, just because of these two guys right here. And then I went and I bought me a Trekker Joe's water bottle holder, so now I am an official backpacker. Okay. So I would say as far as the hardest hike I did, it was the 14er in Colorado. And that was just, I had no idea what I was doing at all. Yeah. I mean, my pack, I'm pretty sure my pack weighs as much as my young child. It's insane.
Yeah. All right. Joe, what about yourself?
I've been hiking back as far back as I can remember. But, in terms of getting out backpacking, it's been since the pandemic, right? Since that hit. We were looking for something to go do, so we got back into it. Robin actually got into it first, my wife. So, and then started taking off with that. wound up doing the Lone Star and GRT and some other stuff, and um, so that I think the GRT, I think as we talked about in our episode, the GRT was probably the most technical, most challenging. But in terms of pure physicality, I did Long's Peak with my brother probably, I don't know, I'd say it's 13, 14 years ago at this point. But we had done it after a full day of bouldering up in one of the canyons up there. Came
Ooh.
down, ate some pasta, and drank a bunch of water, and went to the trailhead and hiked the 14er.
And people die on longs all the time.
Yeah. Well, this was not in the winter, so we're thankful for that. It was like early September. But yeah, we hit the peak at sunrise, and then we had to come back down, and he had to take me directly to the Denver airport. Like after
Oh
that,
God.
sat down on that
Wow.
plane. My head hit the back of the seat, and the next thing I know, the stewardess is waking me up, like, "Sir, we've landed. You need to get off the plane." It's like, oh, okay. I was passed out straight up on the plane. So that was probably the most physically challenging thing. Yeah, it was
All
a
right.
pretty wild adventure.
Jeez. And for me, so it kind of started, just to the listeners, touched on it in episode 1 with Lori and my wife. We were trying to dodge a blizzard. I saw Guadalupe Mountains, and I'm like, there's no mountains in Texas. Come on. And then did some research and like, holy crap, there are. And so that was probably kind of really sparked my love for hiking and backpacking. And I think for me, the hardest, we've done a few 14ers and they were hard, but I think the absolute hardest hike that I've done was the Quad. So hiking from Guadalupe Peak or up to Guadalupe Peak and then navigating to Shumard. It's not trail, it's all reading a map, then to Bartlett, then to Bush, and then back down to Pine Springs. That's probably been the hardest.
And you did that while it was still legal, correct?
Maybe.
Yes.
I don't know when that dumb rule from the
Oh, that was
park went
recent.
into
So
effect.
Yeah, well,
Um,
that would be a yes.
you're good. You're good.
Yeah,
Does
I
Todd work for the
talk-
government now or what?
Yeah, I
Bite
just
your
talk.
tongue.
I have a contact, and Todd, it's the same contact that you have, and we just find out where everybody's at.
That
That day.
exactly.
But yeah, so that's got to be so. And what's funny is we've talked to Henning and Sam who did it with me. I don't know if it was so hard that my mind has blocked out how hard it is, and I'm just saying like it's got to be the hardest hike that I've done. But just doing a quick thinking about it, it doesn't strike me as like, oh man, that was the hardest hike I did. But absolutely, it has to be. Like it was, it was impossible.
What made it so hard? Was it the lack of trail, or was it the incline, or just a combination of everything?
I think it was everything. It was mentally draining, physically draining. Because when you start, when you get off the trail, you think you know the route, and you're looking at a map. Henning was in the Marines, so land nav is that's his cup of tea. You're looking at the map and we're all discussing, and of course he's we started out like you're the leader, you're going to make the ultimate call. If there's a discussion to be had, we can have a discussion, but it's you are going to direct us. And we're all looking, yeah, that looks like the way to go. And then when you go there and you start to see what it really means on a topographical map in reality, and you're thinking like, wow, then it kind of dawned on me like, wow, we can get cliffed out. And
Somebody told me once before, a lot of change can happen within a 40-foot contour.
absolutely.
Oh man.
Oh yeah.
And when you
That's a
say
good- I like
cliffed
that.
out, it doesn't mean 1,000-foot cliff. It can mean 15 foot. It can mean
Exactly.
20 foot.
Right.
It can mean, and you just misread. So then you're hiking all the way back up to then try to
Yep.
reroute. Luckily,
Hopefully.
we didn't do it
hopefully.
the most efficient way. Yeah, we lost a lot of elevation to get back up, but it
Yeah.
was absolutely the most safest way. But yeah, it was everything. It was just the navigation,
It's mentally taxing. having
Yeah,
to constantly like check that and make sure.
that's
Yeah.
just like the El Capitan trail.
Yeah.
That trail broke me, and it's not a hard trail, but just
Yeah.
when you're prepared for an easy trail, and then all of a sudden you get in those canyons, and and you do get clipped out 3 or 4 times and have to hike back and there's no trail, and you're stepping on overgrown trail, and it's 300-400 foot of drop right next to you, exposure, and yeah,
And it doesn't help that like every step out there is so similar to the last step you just took.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I think Joe will agree with me on this since he's done the GRT as well. That Carlsbad Canyon section, Carlsbad Caverns, excuse me. There's a quote unquote trail there, but it hasn't been used since before the park became a national park. I mean, if you follow the quote unquote trail, you're going to walk right through this cactus or this agave, grove,
Right.
and well, there go your ankles,
I think that
So
was
yeah,
one of the things
I
that,
can see how that can be taxing.
yeah. Yeah. I was just going to add to that. I think that that's one of the things that makes that one so challenging is it's that like for the first, I don't know, what, 30, 40 miles, something like that.
Not that much, but yeah,
28, 30. I don't know. Yeah. I don't, it's a lot of that. Though. It's
the
figuring out where
Carlsbad
you're
Caverns
going.
section.
Yeah.
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 But then you got
Specifically.
the exact opposite of that when you're on some of the trails that are multi-use, and you've got the side-by-side guys out there, dirt bikes, and now it's just loose gravel. You
Yep.
know,
That's
so
a
then
very good point.
either way, we're still going to twist our ankles.
And I don't care if you have a hiking boot or a trail runner, your ankle's going to twist. It's going to twist. All right. So for me, hiking season's fixing to kick off. So I really start to focus on right now is my getting in hiking shape. So I was talking to Todd earlier while we were getting organized for this podcast that I started, cycling again this morning. I usually start hiking the first part of September. Todd, your hiking season's 365 days a year. You're traveling all over the United States. So I think kind of the first question that I wanted to talk about is, and Todd, you can kind of kick this off, and it kind of goes in how do you choose a hike or a backpacking trip, and kind of like what are some of the key factors when you consider putting together a hiking trip or picking out a trail that you'd like to kind of tackle?
Well, for me, I guess the first thing would be what time of year is it? Like this Wyoming trip I just got back from. I knew I wasn't going to be doing any backpacking in Texas in July. I'm not that much of a masochist. So I started looking for trails, that were a little bit further north or a little bit higher elevation. And the way I came up with it, I'd never heard of this loop up in Wyoming before. Never heard of it. So I just pulled up the All Trails app and I started filtering. Okay, I want a loop trail because I know that's going to make the logistics so much easier. I won't have to worry about a shuttle. I just wherever we park the car, where we start is where we're going to end. So it needs to be a loop. Okay, well, the guy that I'm going with will basically have about 5 days. Okay, let's say we want to do between 12, 15 miles a day. So we're looking at least a 60-mile trail. So I filtered down a little bit deeper. So I found several that met that criteria across the state. And then it was like, okay, well, this one's, in Georgia. Well, Georgia's just as hot as Texas, so we're not going to do that one. Found out that, okay, hey, here's this one up in the Bighorns of Wyoming. Well, let's see what the temperatures are. Well, the temperature in the little town at the base of the mountains was 95 to 100 degrees. Well, that's not going to work. Wait a minute. Their elevation is 5,000 feet lower than what the trail is going to be. So sure enough, our first night on the trail, it got down to about 31 degrees. And the rest of the trip, the high temps were in the very low 70s. So for me, it boils down to ease of logistics, which a loop meets those criteria, and the length of the trip, and then what the weather's like.
All right. And Joe, what about you?
Usually I'm looking for something that just piques my interest, and I don't, it's hard to say sometimes what exactly that might be. Right. But,
Yeah.
weather, obviously being in Texas, as well, right. we know the summertime here is I don't know. I'm not like Todd said, I'm not that much of a masochist to go camp and sweat, in the middle of the night when it's 80, 90 degrees at night still. So I usually look to go north or at least elevation, right? So that's going to be
Yeah.
obviously one of those is elevation. That's a criteria. And then logistics are, I think about logistics, but sometimes I'm just like, I'll figure it out, as well. So I kind of leave that part a little willy nilly sometimes, if you will.
See, I think that's the planner in me that
Yeah, yeah.
has to have that figured out.
Well, getting to and from trail, I mean, obviously, but that's beyond that. So I do look into though, like, okay, where, I'll start looking at maps, trying to figure out the trail itself. That's the kind of, when I get into the planning kind of phase or stage of it is looking at the actual trail and seeing, okay, how far do we think we're going to go? What's going to be, or I think that might be a decent area to start looking for a campsite or, research stuff online to figure out like, where are those stops going to be along that trail? Where can I resupply if I need to, if it's something that's long enough, it requires that, right? And then I think the logistics comes like, okay, who can give me a ride? I kind of figure out the trail first.
I see
Yeah.
you raising your hand,
I
JR.
saw that JR, yeah, JR waving his hand. Hey,
Yeah, and to the
um,
listeners, if you heard Todd's episode, we did talk about this is the gentleman that drove the 3 hours to rescue you guys
both of us.
off the
Yeah,
GRT.
4.5 or 5, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, it
was.
was over 4 hours. Yeah,
it was a
drove
wave.
there,
We
drove
appreciate
back,
it.
and then went to work.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that's crazy.
Saved
What
2
friends
lives.
do.
Thankful though.
Yep.
Should have seen the
But
smile on their faces when they saw the car pull up. Huh?
yeah, we had been chilling there for a little bit. um,
Chilling is a strong word to use there. It was
oh
windy.
yeah, it was. Sorry, I totally forgot what I was saying now, but that was a good time though. Even so,
All right.
it
And what
was
about
definitely
you,
an
JR?
adventure. Yeah, go ahead.
So it depends on if I'm going to go hiking with Todd or if I'm going camping with my family, as opposed to where I want to go. I do have an advantage, and
Mhm.
Todd will agree to this. Where I'm at, I'm a lot closer to Cloudcroft, to Gumo, to Big Bend than most guys. So perfect example is if you look at the map, Cloudcroft yesterday's high temperature was 78 degrees. That's beautiful, you know.
Pretty nice.
And then when I go there, I've got a bunch of spots that we go overlanding camping at. So what I try to do is try to like the last time, find a spot and then draw a loop around there so that my family can stay at the camp, they can hang out and relax and make s'mores all day, but I can hike and do my thing without interrupting
Mhm.
them or having to get a ride back.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm hiking with Todd, oh, I just don't care. He plans it all. It's easy that way, man.
It's what I do.
It
That's
is.
right.
Just
I
don't let him
I
change
think
the plans on you in the middle of the hike.
yeah. I
Just
think
messing
for
around.
me, since I have a hiking season, I don't really care so much about weather because, from September to probably hike until maybe May, it's pretty not too bad. And most of my hiking is in Texas. So I'm
Mhm.
not worried about the weather. But like my factors, Todd and I talk about this a lot. What I feel will challenge me and really push me not to a breaking point, but whether it's miles per day or elevation or like at Guadalupe Mountains, I want to connect Dog Canyon to Pine Springs, or I want to do this to that, or the like. So it's really what can I put
Yeah.
together to challenge me, and that keeps me out of the bed. Like, I'm diabetic, I have a lot of health issues. If I don't have a challenge, then I'm just laying in bed and I don't usually feel good. So, I need these challenges,
Your
and that's
motivation, right?
basically, yeah, when I start
Something to
putting
work
putting
towards. Mhm.
We were talking a little bit before you hit record, and I think the opposite of a challenge is complacency. And I mean, who wants to plan a backpacking trip where you do 5 miles a day? Now if you're way overweight, you're out of shape, 5 miles a day might be what's made, that's what might be what all you can do. But for somebody like us, and we're in reasonable shape, why would you limit yourself, to get into camp? Well, I finished the miles I had marked for the day, and it was only 10 miles. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I guess we'll just sit here for the next 6 hours. You know,
We'll get so
Yeah.
bored.
Yeah, yeah,
I'd be
that's
so
me.
bored.
I'm bored. I don't want to
Yeah.
just sit here and
Uh-uh.
stare at the sky. Yeah, it's beautiful, but we can do that while we're walking down the trail.
And
Yeah.
that doesn't make for a good podcast episode either, just to sit in camp for
It
5
makes for a
hours.
terrible
Sure wouldn't.
podcast. And you don't grow when you do that. You don't know what your limits are because you're never pushing them.
Yeah.
You have to get out of your comfort zone. And the reality is, if we're going to be 1,000% honest here, what are we doing? We're walking.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be days where it doesn't, it's going to suck. You have to embrace the suck or whatever. But you find little tricks that you can do. Like I'm going to go to the next mile marker, or I'm going to count to 100, or, me and Todd, you were talking about this the other day. The last time I went hiking and I rolled my ankle. Well, I'm out there by myself. No one's coming to get you. So I would just click my hiking sticks 100 times, like 100 paces, and take 10 seconds off. 100 paces, 10 seconds off. But you just don't quit.
Find a way through it. Yeah. Yeah.
Or you're like, Todd did a 30-mile day. I'm doing 31.
Hey, if I go backpacking with somebody and at the end of the day they're not sitting on the ground panting, that means we need to do some more miles.
That's it.
I hear that.
Because I don't want to be the one that gets, outdone by somebody.
And to kind of go with that first question, how important when you're picking a trail or planning a trip is the difficulty level, and how do you guys currently assess the difficulty level? Todd, you want to kick us off?
Difficulty is one of my biggest criteria for choosing a hike.
Yeah.
If it's something like I'm going to call it simple, something like the Lone Star Trail where it's flat and there's no real quote unquote challenge. Well, I'm going to challenge myself to see how many miles I can do. I mean, this winter I'm going to do the Lone Star Trail in 2 days. I'm going to.
Yes, we are.
That is a big motivation for me, is to push myself and see what I can do. Now on something like the Centennial that Joe and I did, there's elevation factors into that. Well, that's going to slow me down.
Yeah.
So length of the trail, difficulty of the trail, popularity. How popular is this route? I don't want to do the same thing that everybody else and their dog's doing. I want to do something new.
Right.
I mean, and here we are, we're in 2024. Everything's been explored. So, everybody does the Appalachian Trail. Let's go check out this other trail over here. I've told JR several times, if I ever do one of the long trails, it'll be the CDT, because that's the one that's still the quote unquote wildest.
Right.
I think another factor that I consider when I'm thinking about a trip is this a trail or is this a route? A trail, this loop I just did in Wyoming, it was a trail. The whole loop was trail number 38. Something smaller like the Eagle Rock Loop, well, that's not really a trail, that's a route, because it's a combination of different trails. That's one of the factors that goes into my decision making is this a route? Is it a trail? Is it established? Is it, just word of mouth? That's what I think about.
All right, Joe.
Along the same lines, kind of. Obviously, I like challenging myself too. I get, it's nice to get out, like you said. You got to break that comfort zone, just like these guys were saying. I think one of the other things too is like, are there cool views? That's kind of one of the things I look at. Like the Appalachian Trail, like for instance. I mean, not that it's that's a challenge. Walking that far, period, is a challenge. No ifs, ands, or buts. But there's not a lot of views on that one, apparently, right? From what I understand,
Green tunnel.
There are some.
Green tunnel. Yeah.
I mean, they call it a green tunnel for a reason. So, to me, that doesn't really interest me so much. So, with views come difficulty. You got to get to them.
You have to earn. You have to earn those views.
You do have to.
Right when you first said that, I was like, "But you're absolutely right."
Yep. Yep. With views come difficulty.
The
Um,
best views are at the top of the hardest climbs.
yeah, they generally are. So, that's one thing, right? The other thing is um, getting off the beaten path too, right? I agree with that
Yeah.
100% on Todd, and that's probably why we like to hike so much together. We need to do some more of that, but I'll get out of
Yeah.
the sweatshop here at some point in time.
I think something for me is a lot with the views. I love getting somewhere in Guadalupe Mountains on the back side of it. There's some spots up there that they're not being posted on any page, any social media because no one knows how to get out there.
Yeah.
That last time me and Todd were out there, and we weren't really backpacking. I mean, we drove the Forerunner all the way out there to the end of the road and then the end of that road, and but when you get out from there and we just did a little bit of bushwhacking and hiking, there's views up there that are just breathtaking. And there's a spot, the one camping spot, Todd, remember on the ledge,
I know
we're
what you're
like,
talking about.
you know what I'm talking about. We're like, I bet no one's ever stepped there. It's that isolated. That's what I like. I don't really, not that I don't like people. I love people. I just want to hike with a lot of people
Yeah.
because, you hike with a lot of people, then you got more trail usage, you got the damage, you got trash, and I just let me go out there by myself.
Yeah. I think, for me, I think difficulty level on a hike is very important because that's what drives me, right? To see like, oh, can I do this? I don't know that I truly know how to or am accurate at accessing
Oh, I
or
certainly am not. I learned that lesson
assessing the
hardcore on the GRT.
yeah, assessing how hard this is really going to be. So
Yeah,
you're reading
yeah.
comments and like on some of these hiking pages, somebody asked, the Smith Springs Trail, how hard is it? Well, I mean, it could be hard for you if you never
That's all
walked.
relative.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Hard hard is
Definitely.
a relative term.
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly.
And I've been on some hikes where I'm like, what in the heck am I doing? This is crazy. And if Lori saw me doing this, I would be in trouble.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and it's like, you guys were saying that I don't want to do a normal hike. Like Lori always asks me every morning, you want to go on a neighborhood hike? No, I don't. It's 2 miles. Yeah, there's some forest and there's a little trail and it's real cute, but no, I want something that's push me.
You want something that has consequences. When we
Yeah.
were bushwhacking out there, Todd, there were some iffy. Is that the word I can use, Todd?
Sketchy.
Sketchy, yes, sketchy trail, or not even trails, but paths that we found that we took that
Yeah.
were like, I'm sure if our wives saw what the heck we were doing, that would not be cool. But
Was it some more dirt paths?
Joe, I'm gonna say Devil's Den.
Yeah, that's what I was
Mhm.
thinking too. I'm like, that's replaying in my head. I'm like,
we all have
goat
that one
paths.
part.
Yeah, yeah,
But until you put yourself in that predicament
yeah.
and push and get over it and go, huh, I can do some badass stuff.
Yeah. So there's a little part and it's steep as heck between Shoemart and Bartlett. And we
Mhm.
were doing that. And I remember I'm grabbing onto the side of the mountain as I'm traversing this. And I'm thinking if Lori would see me right now,
Yeah.
or we're at Rainier and we're heading up to the Muir snowfields, and John's
Yeah.
teaching me this is the French step. This is how to use the axe. And if you slip, you're probably not going to die. You're going to break a lot of stuff, but try
You're
to,
gonna be hurt.
arrest yourself. And all this is going through my mind as we're climbing up this steep snow hill. For me as a mountain, for him as a hill. And then he starts, okay, hold on. You see that little crack in the snow up there? We need to get through this section quickly because of avalanche. And I'm like, Ava, what?
Oh no.
You're trying to kill me.
Mountaineering skills are totally different, aren't they?
Man, it's
Yeah.
night and day.
I'd like to bring it back to the original, the question, how important it is to
Yeah.
assess the difficulty of a trail. And I think one of the key things that people always seem to forget, and we touched on it a little bit here, every person has a different definition of what difficulty is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
definitely subjective.
that definition may change and should change as the person grows in their abilities. At the
Progress.
first of this episode, when you said, what's the hardest hike you've ever done? I said, well, Guadalupe Peak. And at the time, I was so out of shape. I didn't know what I was doing. It took close to 10 hours for me to do that 4.5 mile trail. At one point, we stopped to take a break, and I fell asleep in the middle of the trail. And my buddy woke me up and said, hey, did you even hear those people walk by? No, I was asleep.
Wow.
The last time I did Guadalupe Peak, I did it in 2 hours.
Yeah,
Guadalupe
exactly.
Guadalupe Peak's not
Right.
hard for me anymore.
Yeah.
And it's one of the easiest elevation gains in the park.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'd put it in like the top 4.
Yeah.
Bear Canyon, McKittrick, Permian Reef, then the Peak. But that goes back to challenging yourself and growing as a hiker / backpacker.
Mm-hmm.
What you once thought was hard will become easy.
Yeah, so that's actually a
And
good point, because that it is a sliding scale as you get more
It really
experience.
is.
And yeah, that's a good way to look at that. What we say could be how we assess a difficulty level could be totally different for somebody just starting out too, right?
This last trip I took, it was an easy trip for me. It was 60 miles, but we were doing what I would call small mile days. It was an easy trip. The guy that went with me, it was pretty challenging for him. It's just, that's why when people ask me, hey, is such and such trail hard? I can't answer that for you. You have to know your abilities and how comfortable you are pushing past what you perceive as your limit.
Yeah, exactly. I guess that actually what does your mental fortitude look like, right? If you do get in a situation that is way beyond your abilities.
What is your physical conditioning?
Right.
Yeah, when you get to the point and when your legs are screaming at you, stop, are you going to suck it up and take another step? Or are you going to say, okay, let's go ahead and set up the tent right here? You've made camp and you're laying in your tent and you're like, man, I could have done another couple of miles. I feel good now.
Yeah.
Well, then you didn't need to stop. You needed to just take a break.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Right.
And I think that's one of the dangers of people, looking, like I say, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, and people looking to somebody who they consider advanced, like myself,
Yeah. Right.
and saying, hey, do you think I can do this? Man, I don't know your heart. I don't know how much grit and determination you'll have when it's, like I say, that Forest Service right over there, somebody will pick you up and take you to the restaurant where you can get a burger and go into town and get a hotel room.
Yeah.
How bad do you want to do this?
And that may be different on different days.
Oh God, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
5 days into a hike, you want to get a ride from somebody or whatever.
I was willing to hitchhike to the Sugar Shack.
Yep.
How do you deal with exposure? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how you deal with it. I know how I deal with it. How do you deal with exposure when the wind's howling? Well, I mean, for me, it's one thing. For you, it's a different thing. There was I hiked with someone and, they want to do El Capitan Peak. And so for me, yeah, it's not that bad of a hike. It's dangerous, rock fall. If there's multiple people, you got to be careful of that kind of stuff. And yeah, there's some sketchy parts going back up where it's almost like you're rock climbing. I was hiking with them on the Davis Mountains at Mount Baldy, and when you kind of get to the end and you're heading up that ridge, and they were panicking, because you're doing a little bit of class 3, and I'm like, yeah, then El Cap's not for you.
Yeah.
I think a lot of social media posts give it the illusion that it's easy. And so we can sit here and say we're just walking. You're walking in the woods. It is easy. It is easy. But if you're overweight, if you're out of shape, if you don't do good trying to do stuff on your own and you need somebody else to lean on or to guide you, there's just different. Everybody's different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So kind of going back to the weather part of it, not so much about Texas heat or something, but once you guys, you've done the research, you picked a trail, maybe that you would want to do, you start researching it. How do you plan for weather conditions? So, just for an example, I don't hike a lot in Colorado, but every other summer we try to go and I do some hiking out there and I had no idea that you need to get up and back down before noon because of thunderstorms. So,
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
when you guys are picking, and Todd, you're hiking all over the United States. How do you, I don't know, start to prepare yourself for potential weather or researching it? Just to kind of get the lay of the land by the timing that you get out there and what you
Well,
can expect or should expect.
well, personally, what I'll do is I'll go to any of the million weather almanacs online. What is
Yeah,
the if this is when I'm planning on doing the trip, what
Mhm.
does the historical record say this is what the weather is usually like?
Right.
So I have a pretty good baseline. Okay, the temp should be here, the rain should be like this. And then as it gets closer to time, I'll start watching the local news for
yeah,
whatever place that is. I'll get on my phone and type in that I'm in such and such state and such and look at the 10-day forecast. Okay, well, it's still looking kind of, oh, there's going to be a little bit of rain on this day. Might want to watch that.
yeah,
But weather is so unpredictable day to day. It seems like. But if you can get at least for me, if I can get a general idea, this is what in a normal year, this is what you should expect.
yeah,
That way, do I want to bring my Arc'teryx rain jacket or do I want to bring my frog top? You know,
yeah,
Hmm.
do I want to bring a rain kilt or do I want to bring a full rain suit? I mean, 'cause that's the thing. At least for me, is getting wet and cold. Wet and cold's not fun.
yeah,
Wet
No,
and
that's
cold
not
can be
fun.
wet and cold can be dangerous.
Yeah.
So that's
Wet's okay,
cold.
cold's okay, but both, nope.
Exactly.
Yeah, not together.
Cold I can deal with. Wet I can deal with. But the combination of the two is a recipe for disaster.
So when you
Um,
add wet and you add cold, you take on mental. You know what I
oh
mean?
well,
Oh,
yeah,
for
So
sure.
yeah, when you're wet and cold, it just wears you down mentally, and you're like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to quit. I'm gonna have to quit, and eventually one of them's gonna win. You know?
Oh, how many times have I bailed from hiking the Ouachita Trail?
Not got,
3 or 4
gonna bring
times.
that up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, well, I'm at mile 70, but I'm dripping wet. I can
Yeah.
sit here in this shelter for a couple of days and dry out, or I can walk back down the hill and get a ride back to the house. Well, I'm gonna go back to the house. Yeah,
yeah,
the mental aspect really gets you when you're that uncomfortable.
Yep.
If it's been raining for multiple days, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah, that
man.
that would I could see that. I know somebody, there's the famous quote that, there's no bad weather, there's only the
Bad
wrong items of clothing or something,
gear.
right? Something to that
Yeah.
effect. Yeah, gear.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's like Todd said though. I mean, looking at the almanacs, right? Seeing I mean I don't really see another way to really do that too effectively. Is right. Get an idea what's out there on an average. And then like
Yeah.
you said, when you're getting closer to it, just kind of have to pay attention to it. So
Yeah. It's
no,
not a
no.
predictor, but it will get you in the ballpark.
And
Right.
it's
yeah,
like, okay, I might need this, this, and this, and obviously layering and making sure that that system is working for you,
Something else that's
is
probably good to do
big.
is if you know you're going to a certain area, like where you just went, Todd, you might see, is there a Facebook group up there?
yeah,
And maybe they'll
Yeah.
have some other information. Maybe they'll know, hey, here's a
Mhm.
spot where you can, put your water. You can, there's a water source here. The internet is good and bad. It's got a lot of information, just not all of it's true.
yeah. I think for me and the weather, like here locally, I don't care about the weather in the aspect of what's happening. I do want to know if it's raining because then
Yeah.
I need to pack the rain stuff. So for me, it's a challenge for my gear. It's a challenge for me. I know I'm not going to be here locally, Lone Star Hiking Trail. Unless there's a tornado, but I'm not going to be in anything dire, and I could really
Right.
push my gear, push myself. How do I react how's my shoe set up and socks set up and how's my rain, but like for the quads, Todd, I'm exactly like you. Like I start looking at the weather probably a couple of weeks ahead of time, just see what's happening. Are there days where there's high wind, or is it pretty consistent? And then also, like, to the listeners, understand your elevation and understand that the weather is going to be way different. So when I'm checking quad weather, I'm not checking, Salt Flat,
Pine Springs or
Pine Springs weather. I'm checking, there's a few elevation websites where they're giving you the wind readings, the weather, and that's what I'm focusing on.
Yeah. Well,
and
yeah,
you can
yeah, no,
also,
that's a good point. You have to look at the weather at the elevation and the point you're going to, especially if you're
You,
going to elevation.
you can use what they call the aviator's rule. Y'all know what that is?
Heard it. I don't know what it is.
Temperature drops by approximately 3 degrees Fahrenheit for every 1,000 feet of elevation gain. So if the trailhead is at 6,000 feet and it's 93 degrees, well, 1,000 feet up the mountain, it should be around 90. Another 1,000 feet up, it should be about 87. So that's and I found that to be pretty accurate. If you compare just the Gouache, for example, there's a temperature station at Pine Springs. Actually, it's across the street from Pine Springs. And then there's another one up in the bowl. You can compare the two and look at the temperature differential. And if you do the math, okay, the bowl is this much higher than Pine Springs, so it should be this much cooler. And it's usually pretty close.
Yeah. And at least it's in the ballpark, right? And that's what really
exactly,
matters.
Exactly. You might not get it down to the single, digit degree, but it'll put you in the ballpark.
It'll be enough to know whether you need your puppy or not. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I can tell you that 2 years ago, I tried to do the Guadalupe Peak in a blizzard. We had a snowstorm.
And you didn't invite me either.
Winds. Yeah, it was. I didn't finish it. I got up. I got past the bridge, and I'm climbing up. And there was times where I had to stop and anchor myself down with the trekking poles because of the wind. And then I turned around. I'm like, oh crap! I can't see my footprints in the snow. Maybe I should just try to call this a day. So I did. I got defeated.
As much as I wish I'd been with you on that trip, because the pictures were amazing.
Oh, yeah.
It's probably a good thing I wasn't there, because I know you and I would have been like, hey man, hey, just a little bit more. Yeah, I know it's dangerous, but I got you.
You'll be a quitter?
I took a guy brand new to hiking, backpacking to Guad. We got right before the bridge, and I rounded this corner, and there was a little piece of snow, and I took a Ussie with it. And then all of a sudden a snowflake comes down, and then I just look off in the distance, and there's snow clouds, and I'm like, oh shit, okay. So we continue hiking, and it just starts snowing like crazy. And that's the thing, like, what are we gonna do? Do we keep going? Do we turn back? And I decided to keep going. It was fine. I mean, like, it wasn't enough snow where I felt like the footprints, because that was the thing, are my footprints going to get covered? And yeah, most of it's a trail, but there's some sections where it's kind of open, and you do need to know how to get to that part of the trail. And what was funny is we got right below the peak, and I lost the trail, and so I start climbing like class 3, because I think that's the way up. And as I'm climbing, and it's snowing, and it's snow everywhere. And I'm like, I don't remember this. And this is like the 6th time I've done the peak. And I look back down at Joel, and he's like almost hyperventilating, because he's thinking that he has to do that. And then when I look back at him, I saw the trail, and I'm like, oh crap. And he's like, and I'm like, no. That's the trail right there. You're not having to do this, but hopefully I don't slip off the mountain. And I always think about that. And should I have turned around? I mean, it worked out fine. And you start getting more experience and thinking of what are the potentials. And so I had one of those blizzard moments too, but that's why I love Guad, right?
Yeah.
I think my limit is on when I'm talking weather, like and wind specifically. I think like 60, 65. I'm good with it. Beyond,
Oh,
Well,
not beyond that.
it makes it hard to walk when
It
when the
does.
wind's
Yeah.
blowing that
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does.
you don't want to be off balance.
Yeah,
Oh no,
that's what I'm saying. I
Permian
had to
Reef,
use the trekking
no.
poles.
No. Yeah. Definitely not there.
All right, so I know we kind of touched on it, but Todd, give us the tools that you use in researching a new trail. Was it whether it's apps, Facebook groups,
Oh,
whatever?
you don't
Just
have that long of our podcast, sir.
And I was about to say, are we gonna make this a separate episode?
You're
yeah.
gonna have 3 or 4 episodes now.
No.
But what do you
Y'all think
think
it's
for a
funny, but
new
this is
hiker and backpacker? Like, what do you
this
think for a
is
new
this
hiker?
is what I do. I mean,
Yeah.
in my spare time, I'm in front of the computer looking at
Oh, I
maps,
know.
and
So,
you know,
so
that's just
for a new hiker and backpacker, what do you feel is the most important if they're researching for potential hikes and trails?
well. The first thing I would say, a lot of people will tell you all trails, all trails, all trails. All trails is good for finding a trail.
Right.
It's community based, so you don't know if the track that Joe Bob uploaded is the correct track or not.
Yeah.
He could be uploading the track that he took through the woods that parallels the trail.
Mhm.
But in general, all trails is good for finding new trails. That's how I found this trail up in Wyoming. The second thing I would say, if you're going to build a route, you want to do such and such trail that you found on all trails, get on something like CalTopo, where you've got Forest Service maps, you've got U.S. Geologic Survey maps, you've got Google Maps. There's another company called Thunder Forest Outdoors. I believe they're based in England. They've got really good topographic maps. Get on there and start building your route, because most of these routes that you'll find on all trails are going to be on there, and see if the route that you build in CalTopo jives with what you found on all trails. Once you've got it figured out, okay, this should be the route. Go and look, or at least what I'll do. I mean, don't take what I say as gospel, but go on Strava on the heat map. You don't even have to have a Strava subscription, and see if people are hiking this route. You know, it'll show up as pink or blue or whatever. You know, and the more heavily trafficked it is, the more it'll show up. Once you're pretty sure that, okay, this route is there, it is what they say it is, Gaia GPS is a wonderful app navigating in the backcountry. If the trail is on far out, it used to be Gut Hook, something like the AT, or as small as Eagle Rock Loop or the Washita Trail, use Far Out. They're wonderful apps. And $6 for an app that'll tell you 0.3 of a mile to the next water source, 6.2 miles to the next shelter. Man, that's invaluable. The downside, at least for me, with Far Out is when I'm going up that big hill, I'm constantly pulling out my phone going, okay, 0.4 of a mile left. And I'll walk. Okay, I got to check again. Okay, 0.35 of a mile. Okay. You know, you become too dependent on it to give you some reassurance about, oh man, the struggle is going to be over in 0.2 of a mile.
Yeah.
But that's my process. I'll find something on all trails, verify it, build the route with CalTopo to make sure everything's what it says it is. Load it into Gaia. That's what I did with the Centennial. That's what I did with this route up in Wyoming. God, several of the routes I've built. I'll build them. The Cloudcroft Loop I've got built out. I'll build that, load it into Gaia, and then, like I said, Gaia, knock wood, Gaia hadn't let me down yet.
Yeah. And, you know, to the listeners, Todd is the creator of the Guadalupe Mountains Backcountry Hikers. And Joe, you're one of the admins as well, right?
Yes.
Or what do you call him?
He's still a moderator.
Moderator.
I need to bump him up to admin.
Not admin, but like moderator.
He needs a raise.
Yeah.
He needs a raise.
So Todd, how much do you see on your Facebook site with people asking questions about the Guadalupe Mountains as they're
That was
researching?
something I was going to add. Yeah.
Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I was just saying, like, yeah, using Facebook groups, right? I mean, because they're as I've seen, like we have the backcountry, the Guadalupe backcountry hikers. Um, there's probably group for almost every trail out there if it's if it's large enough to get a lot of attraction to it, right? And maybe not even a lot of attraction, just some. So those groups are pretty invaluable too, really, in adding to like knowledge of not just technically, okay, here's the route, but what might you encounter along that way, you know
Yeah.
things like, I think it was a Centennial group, somebody even keeps a spreadsheet of like the water in the creeks, and every time
Yeah,
somebody goes through, they give them a report and update it.
the
Yeah.
Centennial's not on Far Out, but somebody took it upon themselves to build
Yep.
a spreadsheet that hikers can update. So instead of looking at Far Out for the water conditions, you can look at that spreadsheet and have that crowdsourced info that may be the guy that went ahead of you yesterday reporting, hey, there's still water.
Yeah.
Yeah, so stuff like that like the groups like that can be invaluable as well. I mean, everything else Todd said, it's like he finds the trails on all trails. I tend to like, maybe I'll see something on, some Facebook group somewhere. I might see something on maybe YouTube even, right? I haven't seen,
Oh,
there's a lot
YouTube,
of trails
yes,
out there. YouTube, right? And then you
yes.
find those, and then yeah, you figure out, okay, what does this look like? Um,
Yep,
and so,
YouTube videos
mhm,
will give
mhm,
you this is what the trail actually looks like. And a
yep.
lot of times people in their comments or in the description of the video will post a GPX file of the trail.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other thing I look for. I search online for like a GPX file if I can find one.
Oh, while I'm thinking
Something
of
I
GPX
use.
file,
Oh, go ahead.
fastestknowntime.com. If fastestknowntime.com, FKT.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
If somebody has done this trail, then somebody has done it faster than anybody else.
Hmm.
And if you want to have that submitted, and if I want to hold the FKT for that trail, I have to supply a track showing that I did that trail.
Oh yeah,
And
sure you would.
that, yeah, FKT websites are invaluable for showing you this is the actual route.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
pretty
Gaia's
cool.
good. I've started using Onyx myself, Onyx Backcountry.
That's
Yeah.
what I use.
And I ran into some issues with Gaia at one point with like tracking like mileage correctly for me, but could have been my phone. My phone's kind of older. Who knows? But anyway, the subscription ran out and I got a good deal on the other one. So I moved over to it, and I've been liking that one just fine too. So, pretty much any of the mapping apps. I mean, if they're, some of the smaller ones don't have quite some of the features and they're not as good, but, any mapping app really almost,
Yeah.
as long as it's fairly accurate, can help you out. Yeah.
And if we're talking about apps, I think it bears repeating that you don't have to have cell service to use these apps.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's a cell phone signal from the tower that you see up on the hill, and then there's a GPS signal from the satellite that's orbiting the Earth. They're two different things. Put your phone in airplane mode, your GPS still works.
Download your maps.
Download the map first.
Download the
Thank
map.
you.
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think, Joe, it was in our episode we talked about that, that some of these are probably you're going to have to pay for a service,
Mhm.
but understand before you go out or go locally and download the map and play around with it and turn off your cell, airplane mode and pretend that you have no signal and you're way out and wherever, and
Yeah, get
make
familiar
sure
with
that
it.
you
Yeah.
have everything, everything that works. So JR, what about you? What tools is there any tools outside of what we kind of discussed that you use to when you're planning a hike?
So as far as trying to plan a hike or anything like that, I use Todd. Todd.com is the greatest.
Dad Duck, yeah.
Can't get it
He's
right.
taught me a lot.
Awkward.
Something that I don't think we've mentioned here is Google Earth.
Yeah.
Zooming into Google Earth and just looking at the different terrain. And like Joe, I've got I forgot what it's called, OnX. I've got OnX because we do a lot of overlanding. So
Yeah, I've got the off-road version too.
yeah, and
Both of them.
for the most part, what I'll do, I'm like, this looks neat. I'll draw it out, and then I just forward it to Todd, and Todd's like, that looks cool, but if you do this and add all this other extra miles on it, and terrain and elevation, it'll be great.
That sounds about right.
Yeah,
That'd be even
he's our
better.
He's our torture master.
Yeah.
Well, this trail I just did in Wyoming is called the Solitude Loop. It's 60 miles. I'm currently working on the Super Solitude. That'll be over 100.
See how near you would.
Nice.
That sounds like
And I
our Todd we know and love.
Yep.
I think that's how I first talked to Todd. He goes, he made a post, is there anybody sitting there
Yeah.
putting together the longest trail in Guadalupe and Lincoln? And I'm like, no, but I'm looking at Guad and I'm trying to put together this. So that was our first connection.
That'll be in December.
No. So I don't know that I have anything different than what you guys already talked about with the tools that I use. I think from Texas, it's pretty, most of the trails and stuff that you want to do, except for the stuff that Todd does, is pretty well documented. But like going into New Mexico and Colorado, I will reach out, like Joe said, to the local Facebook groups and read through some of the posts. I mean, I've actually befriended a couple of people, one in New Mexico and one in Colorado, and the gentleman in Colorado will be on a podcast. In fact, we were supposed to record it on Monday, and so my thought is we travel. When I go to Colorado or New Mexico, I have more Texas license plates that I see than Colorado license plates. So having a mountaineer on the episode and kind of educating us to the safety and some of the good trails and stuff, I thought would be a benefit. So he'll be on. But yeah, I think you guys nailed it with all the tools and stuff. So there's no reason, whether you're a new backpacker or a seasoned backpacker, that you should ever be in a situation where you're not prepared if you do the due diligence. So Todd, this is going to be a good one for you.
Oh boy.
So when you're planning a hike, how does you going solo versus going with someone versus do I invite this person? Like, how does that come into? So here's my point. When I first got into hiking, I wanted to show everybody the love of hiking. I don't care. You're coming with me. I'm going to, if you have struggles in life, we're hiking. If you're doing this, doing that. So at some point I changed a little bit to like, wow, there's a lot of wonderful things that I want to do and I want to get accomplished. And then, and I have limited time to go hiking and stuff, right? I got family, work and stuff. And then it kind of went into some of these things that I wanted to get accomplished. You bring the people out and they're not in shape, or they're not in the expertise is not there, and so you end up just like not canceling, like attempting, but it just, you got to turn around or turn back. So Todd, how do you navigate through all that? Because for you, definitely you have challenges that you want to do for yourself, but I think also you like hiking with people and your friends and stuff. So how do you manage all that with what you want to get accomplished, but also making sure that you have the right people around, where safety is not in question, and everybody's able to deliver.
It's really just a case by case basis.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody that's in this meeting right now, I'd have no qualms going hiking with any of y'all, because I know that you guys know your limit, you know what you're capable of, and you're also kind of like me, you want to push yourselves and see what you can do. Not everybody's like that. And the problem is, not everybody's going to be honest with you when you ask them, hey, do you think you can do 3 20-mile days in a row? Oh, sure. And then, you know, at mile 12, they're like, man, this is more than I bargained for. You put yourself in a bad situation. You put me in a bad situation.
Yeah.
Now I'm sitting here feeling responsible for you, you know, because here we are out in the middle of nowhere, and you're telling me you can't do it. You've got to find people that you trust to be honest about their weakness. You know, if I say, hey, Sally Sue, you want to go hike this 30-mile day?
And that wraps up another exciting episode of the Trailblazing Texas podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode today, and stay tuned for our next episode where we will pick back up where we left off and guarantee to uncover many more hiking gems and share many more tips to enhance your experience on the trail. Until then, happy trails and happy hiking.